You are so lucky you are on Brad Stine Has Issues. I am, in fact, Brad Stine, which makes it even more make sense. This is Brad Stine Has Issues, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. And not what makes it even more fascinating is that we have an NBA Hall of Famer on this episode, John Stockton, one of the best point guards in NBA history. And here's what's fascinating. Wyatt desperately wanted to be an NBA point guard, and then he realized just one little hindrance was keeping him from becoming an NBA point guard, and that hindrance was?
I thought a point guard's job was to stop the people putting the score up from actually giving your opponent points.
Yes! Wyatt would get out there and just point and guard everybody that was trying.
No. What happened is whenever the opposing team would score and they would go to input the extra points they got, I would just go in with a club and be like, no, you don't. Oh, no, you don't. No points for them, no.
Yeah. So you were guarding against an accumulation of points.
I thought that's what a point guard did. Doesn't it make sense?
It makes total sense.
Why doesn't every team have one of those?
Listen, I appreciated your ingenuity, and I remember a couple of some local colleges actually tried to recruit you because they're like, we suck. This might be our shot at winning once in a while. So Wyatt, I think you're an innovator.
It would be far from the worst controversy they've had.
Wyatt, you're an innovator, but as like the fate that befalls so many innovators, you are ahead of your time, and they just haven't caught up to your insight as to the best way to utilize your point guard.
Yeah, but I will be demanding royalties when it catches on in 20 years, though. I did invent it.
Yes. Now, when you say royalties, are you referencing a monarchy, or do you mean as in the means of a monetary or residual?
Yes. I want to be the king of some unknown island in 20 years as payment for this amazing idea I came up with.
But if you became the king of that so-called island, wouldn't it become not unnamed? Wouldn't you give it a name?
Yeah, I guess it's one of those catch-22 moments, you know? Because, like, I can't own an unnamed island because the moment I do, it's a named island. And I don't want a named island. Those are boring. Everybody has those.
But if you were the king of an island, let's just pretend that you were the king of an island.
All right.
Okay. What would you name it? Let's just start there. What would you call the island of yours?
Oh, that's a good one. Let's see. Wyattville. It's the obvious choice. Let's see what else we could do. Earth 2. Don't ask me what happened to Earth 1.
Wyattville, Earth 2. I think if that's your creative process, I'm guessing you're never going to get an island of your own.
Listen. These things take time. I have to, like, think of some good names and then throw them away in place of the funny ones. Let me see.
What's your favorite actual island name? Like of a named island? You have one that you'll...
Australia.
Okay.
It's an island.
But it's gigantic.
Yeah, exactly. It's the biggest island, I think. Maybe Antarctica beats it.
Do you think that a kangaroo is really just a mutant rabbit that went rogue?
I thought you were going to say, do you really think a kangaroo is real?
Oh, no, I've seen them.
I mean, honestly, I've seen the pictures and stuff. Fake.
Well,
I mean, you know,
so kangaroos are a conspiracy theory.
Of course they are. They were invented along the same area as like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. The kangaroo. Right. Yeah, sure, Pat.
Well, I was wondering if my premise was, especially before I saw one, that they were just mutant rabbits that went rogue.
Nope, guy in a suit. It's a total tourist trap, you know? Because, like, it's Australia. Like, 90% of it's deserts. They need to have something.
So the pouch was really
That's where they hide all their microphones and cameras and stuff.
Oh, my gosh. I thought it was a pee panel. A place for this poor guy to relieve himself.
No. Do you really think somebody getting paid minimum wage in Australia has that luxury?
Are you saying they don't have zippers in Australia?
No. They weld you into the costume.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, it's not like it's the side of Hollywood they don't want you to see.
Ha! It's the dark underbelly.
or under pouch, as the case may be.
Oh my goodness! So, do you think the Loch Ness Monster has a pouch?
Oh, well, yeah. Where do you think all the pee stuff goes?
Gosh, Wyatt, I didn't know you were such an expert on mythological creatures.
After the 625th comment that the moon doesn't exist or whatever that Mom gave me, I turned into a believer, and now I see it. Everything's fake. Everything. Name something.
Conspiracy theories.
Paid actors.
The moon.
Paid actor.
Kangaroos.
2 paid actors.
Joe Biden.
Okay, that one's a bit interesting.
Mhm.
So it's a paid actor controlling a Joe Biden puppet. And I don't mean like I pull the strings and stuff. I mean like an actual puppet, like a wooden thing and everything. Those strings and everything.
Lord have, so that's a marionette.
No, Mary. No, it's not Mary. It's a Joanette.
Oh my Lord.
The Mariette's another one.
Okay, so are you telling me
Yes.
that, and I know you're being facetious, that because you're not a big conspiracy
No,
theorist,
not at all.
but is there any conspiracy theory that to you holds some weight? Like it's like, who knows? Maybe this might be true.
There is the JFK was killed by the CIA one.
Yeah.
I believe that one.
Well, didn't they come out with information that was on Tucker Carlson, like saying,
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, at the time.
So, I mean, doesn't that scare you a little bit that the government has been killing citizens and wiping us out and stealing our freedoms and spying on all this all the time that we thought we were putting our hand on our heart saying, I pledge allegiance to the flag and that we were a free country?
Well, here's the thing. We pledge allegiance to the flag, not them.
Did you ever have to pledge allegiance when you went to school?
Every day.
You did?
Every day, yeah.
At school here in Tennessee?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
In high school?
All day, every day.
How's it go?
I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Wait, do you have to sound kind of like if you had a blow to the head or you have some sort of learning disability?
Yeah, it took place right after blow to the head time.
Okay, go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Wow, you do know that. Do you think that they still do that? Do they still pledge allegiance?
I honestly, at this point, I do not know.
Okay.
I don't know.
How about in college? Did you guys have to pledge allegiance?
In college, you didn't have to show up to classes.
Let me ask you a question. You were at ETSU. That was your first college you ever went to.
Yep.
And then you went to
MTSU for an entire semester.
Which one did you like better?
ETSU.
Because you were...
I actually knew it.
And you were in a dorm.
Yeah.
So you enjoyed that. You ended up with about 3 roommates.
Yes, 3 roommates in 4 years.
In 4 years, they just kind of just recycled new guys in and out. And the last year or so, you were all by yourself.
Okay, I have to talk about my first roommate because, my goodness, that was an experience.
All right, so your first roommate, you're 18 years old, going off to college for the first time, living on your own for the first time. You're in a room with a stranger that suddenly lives in there with you, sleeps in there with you. And what was it like?
Okay, so let me begin by talking about the first time we met.
Okay.
I had already been settled in for like a few days.
Yeah.
He came in like the last day before classes started.
Okay.
The only belongings this man had were 3 garbage bags full of miscellaneous objects.
Give me an example.
I don't know. They were black plastic bags, but I assume it was his clothes, it was his food, it was anything he brought with him.
Okay.
So, and he just shoved them all under the bed. That was it. Now, I was, partly curious, but also partly not about to ask questions, because, me. So I'm just like, okay, I guess this would be fun.
Did he say like hi when you walked in?
Not really, no.
Okay.
And then he went back downstairs. He came back up with what I can only assume is a $4,000+ massive PC rig, like a giant computer, massive monitor, all that stuff. sets it all on the table all pristinely, puts up some headphones, and then just starts playing games for 12 hours.
Really?
I am not kidding. There were moments where I would go to bed. He had been gaming all day. I would go to bed. I would wake up in the morning. He would still be playing the game.
What?
Yes.
How did he have time for class?
Oh, well, that's another funny story. So, we actually had the same class. It was Intro to Digital Media, I believe.
Okay.
So we both had the same class. And for the first few weeks, he would go to the class with me. You know, we wouldn't talk much, but he was there. I saw him. And then he just stopped showing up.
Okay.
I believe it started one day when about the first or second day that I noticed he wasn't showing up, I come back to the dorm. I'm walking in the hallway that leads to it.
Yeah.
And I see this guy sitting on the floor, staring at a wall. He sees me and goes, "Oh, hey, I locked myself out. Can you let me in?" I asked him, "How long have you been sitting there?" And he said, "About half an hour."
Okay.
So I let him back. So I let him in. Immediately went back to the gaming rig.
Right.
Kept playing games. That man was something. I'll tell you that much.
What was his name?
I don't know.
Okay.
How could I know? We never talked.
That's ridiculous.
Oh, no. But it gets better because this was the first, this experience was the first time I ever feared for someone's life.
Okay.
He went to the bathroom. I was on my phone, just not paying attention. And about 10 minutes later, I just hear a massive thud in the bathroom.
Okay.
And I start panicking because I'm like, did he slip? Did he fall? Do I need to,
Right.
is he dead? Is he alive? Do I need to call someone? I literally panicked for 40 straight minutes. I kid you not, 40 minutes.
He didn't come out.
No, it came out, and I was debating internally, like, is there going to be an investigation?
Right.
Am I going to be questioned? Did I do it? I don't know. I've just been here on the phone. I don't...
If you did it was a conspiracy theory.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was so concerned about what I would find. I refused to open the door for 40 minutes.
All right.
And then eventually, I'm just like, okay, it's going to be weird if he's dead and I never checked on him for 40 minutes, so I may as well.
Not to mention when they come in and there's a rotting corpse in your bathroom. It's
and then you're like, I don't know what happened. He was only been dead for an hour.
Yes.
How is he already this decomposed?
All right, so what happened?
So I approach the door, again, terrified of what I'm going to see. I go for the handle, turn it down, I open it, but I only get about 2 inches otherwise before I hit something. And I'm able to peel into it, and it's him lying on the floor of the bathroom. And then he just turns to me and goes, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" He was on his phone. He had fallen 40 minutes ago and was too lazy to get up. So he literally was laying basically underneath the toilet on his phone for 40 minutes. I don't know what to say to that.
And yet, now he is known as the CEO of the largest gaming company in the world. He's a multi-billionaire.
I wish.
His name was Mark Zuckerberg.
No.
What?
So
it wasn't.
My last interaction with him was him. His parents came in, packed up all of his stuff, and he left.
Okay.
The week before finals. I didn't see him again after that.
So he literally never went to class the whole time.
He went to class maybe half the time, and it was the first half, the part that didn't mean anything.
And he obviously didn't turn in any work, or because his parents must have said, "Okay, I've just wasted time."
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, that's what happened.
Okay.
So that was my first roommate. I still have the nightmares.
Right. And your second roommate, if I'm not mistaken, was from England. He was.
He was cool. He was like an exchange student. He gave me a pinata named Clarence.
Okay.
I'm beginning to think I had a rather weird college experience.
No kidding. Now, do you think college experiences on a whole are weird, or do you think they're worth it for kids to be involved with?
It depends. If you're going into gender studies or political science, you've wasted your money. If you go into like a trade job, like a doctor or something, I'd be more concerned if you didn't go to college. I don't want my surgeon knowing everything he knows from YouTube videos, okay?
You mean like the DEI and the diversity hiring they've now done,
yeah,
where they literally have lowered the UCLA requirements to get into UCLA medical school? They are doing that, Wyatt.
I know.
People that aren't smart enough to be surgeons, instead of saying, oh, well, good news is the guys that make it are competent. Nah, how about we just make anybody? You used to do McDonald's, but you have ambitions to be a heart surgeon? Come on in.
Hey, you do you, man, but I ain't asking you to do my operation.
No kidding. So what do you think about your roommate? How he was there for what, a semester? The guy
from a single semester.
And you guys, it seemed like he was really nice and wanted you to hang out with him and go to the gym with him. And you said
mean
no?
The English guy?
Yeah.
Oh, no, he was like for an interview. I thought you meant by the first roommate whose name I totally remember.
Okay, so he was there a year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And he would always be like, hey, you want to go out and do stuff? And I was always like, sure, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Because, he wanted to. And
yeah.
It was like the only excuse I would ever have to actually do college stuff.
What did you guys do?
We went to one of the conventions they had. It was like a game-based convention.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, was he into games too?
Kind of, yeah. Not as much as me, but he was definitely.
So was it a cool convention? Did you enjoy it?
Was pretty cool. Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah. And then he would want to go work out at the gym, and you didn't work out.
No, I think I did join him in one session though, just to see what it was like.
Yeah. And he drank, and you didn't.
Nope, didn't drink at all.
And he walked around naked.
Well, that's parts behind closed doors.
That's the scariest part of it all.
Nah, I still think my other roommate beats him by a country mile. But no.
You don't think if you heard a thud, 40 minutes later you open the door and a naked guy is under the toilet looking at his phone, that might be more disturbing?
No, he was fully clothed and literally under the toilet. Do you know what happens in, around, and near a toilet?
Yeah. Germs.
Who wants their clothes to be touching that?
I don't not.
At least the naked guy can just go in the shower 2 inches away and fix it.
Now, explain to me that the naked stuff, because you said he used to, I don't know, you maybe just slept naked? What happened?
I think that's what it was, yeah. And, I mean, it was fine, like, I guess.
I mean, he would just walk around naked, or he would just get out of bed and pop his clothes on?
Yeah. He would just wake up and then, yeah. But no, it was fine. It's
still disturbing.
It was like...
What is more unattractive than a naked man?
Tuberculosis.
Well, but that's a virus. You don't see it. You'd have to get under a microscope.
Yeah, you don't see it. You know why? Because if you did, you'd be disgusted.
All right, so you got through him. Then you get another guy, number 3.
Yep, he was a physical therapist in training, I believe. Like a nutritionist and stuff.
Okay. And what was his name?
I don't know.
Okay. So did you stay in touch with any of these guys?
No.
Okay. The guy that came in last, how many, was he there a whole
year? That was it.
And you don't know his name. He was very good. Did you all talk?
Oh, yeah, we talked.
So he's nice?
Oh, yeah. All of my roommates were nice.
Oh, good. So you didn't have any problems? No, never had any problem squabbles?
No
issues?
Problem squabbles to speak of.
Did they ever, use your refrigerator and steal your food?
I don't honestly think they knew I had a refrigerator.
How about your microwave?
I had a microwave, yeah. No. So we all kept to ourselves. We had very clear lines of what would go where.
This is my space and that's your space.
Yep, and then Facebook took over and MySpace went away.
Yeah, it's archaic. If I'm not mistaken, some people consider MySpace, some people consider MySpace a conspiracy theory.
What?
It's gone the way of the Loch Ness and the...
Oh, the kangaroo foot. Yeah, I know.
So that was your experience in college. And the thing that I was concerned about the most for you in college was what?
I don't know.
Propaganda, maybe stealing your brain, propagandizing you, fighting against your faith, fighting against your values. And I remember teaching you at least, I said, son, I don't know what they're going to do there. This is college. This is, they are not usually sensitive to Christ, to Christianity, to conservative values, to patriotism. These are Marxist-driven parasites that have taken over the academia. But at least define your terms, son. If they ever want to have a conversation with you, make sure you understand the word they're using and how they define that word. And I was just hoping that, and the one thing I will say about you, White, when I would talk to you about philosophical ideas or even some books, I'd say, hey, you might want to read this. And honestly, I don't think you've ever read one book I ever recommended to you.
I have. It's just.
You don't remember which one it was.
No,
How to Make Your Own Kangaroo Costume. I know that was one.
Well, no, that one was in the fiction section. Conveniently.
Isn't that? So you just didn't give it any extra thought, not realizing this might come in handy during the apocalypse?
Well, no. Everybody knows that kangaroos are the first to go in the apocalypse.
Why is that?
Because everyone knows that the kangaroo stuntmen people, they make the big bucks. So if anyone's going to have apocalypse survival kits, it's going to be them.
You said they were the first to go.
Exactly, because everybody wants them and all the cool stuff they have.
Oh, they wipe them out and take their stuff.
Hey, it's every man, woman, and kangaroo for themselves.
Wow, and now we know what the pouch is for prepper materials.
And that's why they call it MySpace, not All Space.
Oh, Lord have mercy. It all comes perfectly clear. Thank you.
It all fits together. That's why it's a conspiracy.
It's so crazy, it just might work.
And it will work, as far as we know.
All right, so let me ask you this. Did you ever have a class or ever confront someone by which your values or your point of view was questioned, mocked, maligned, or did you ever have any of that sort of radical professor that wanted to indoctrinate you in their point of view, or was everything pretty much just...
Everything was absolutely fine, and I'm pretty sure a large part of it was because I was going into the tech world.
Okay.
And the tech world is all about numbers and stuff. Like, you can't refute numbers.
Yeah,
you can't have an opinion on what 2 plus 2 equals.
Oh, son, you don't know much about postmodern thought. You didn't know that mathematics is a Western construct and it's racist, and that there's other ways of knowing, and other tribes and other cultures have their own style of mathematics, which means 2 plus 2 equals radish?
Well, actually, 2 plus 2 does equal 10. Well, no, it equals 100 in binary. You see, they do have a point. 2 plus 2 equals 4 in base 10, which is what we count with. Base 10 means 0 through 9, and then after the 9, you go back to 1, the next digit over, and go back to 0. Binary is the same thing, only you go up to 1, and then the next one. It's a long story, but basically, you can determine how you count based on whatever base you're using. So
first base, second base, third base, home base?
Close.
Okay.
Base basically means, so you know how once you, like 10 is 2 digits, 9 is 1 digit, 100 is
0.9 would make it 2 digits.
No, 9 is 1 digit. It is 9. There's nothing that comes before or after it. It's just 9.
Okay.
Then 10 is 2 digits, 1, 0. 100 is 3 digits, 1, 0, 0. So base 10 means that you add a digit every 10 numbers you go up.
Okay.
And you can have base 12, where it's every 12 digits. Base pi, where it's every pi digits. Though don't do that. It's annoying to try to figure that out. But the point is, on the surface, technically, 2 plus 2 can equal whatever you want it to be. However, that doesn't mean it's helpful.
Is it practical? Can it be used in actual physics?
Theoretically, yes, but why would you? There's no advantage to doing it. It's just there for pretentious people to sound and act pretentious.
But there's no potential discovery using that technique. I mean,
no, because it's all math. You might be able to change the digits. You might change what they look like, but you can't change what they mean.
So that math still ends up in the same conclusion because...
The mass of an object will always be the same, no matter if it's base 2, base 10, base infinity. It'll look different, but it won't be different.
Wyatt, that's interesting. That's like,
Oh, yeah.
that's like mathematical philosophy.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and here's the thing. For those who've walked away from any potential that there is a transcendent, a miraculous, they are left with a world that doesn't make sense. They don't have enough time, for example, in neo-Darwinism for organisms to randomly mutate and become complex. And there's not enough time for how long it would take because it's not true. There is no fossil record of any forms or species transforming into a different species. It doesn't exist because it didn't happen. And so they believe it did because they're looking at different species. They know they have to draw a conclusion that is facing them in reality. It's true, so they're trying to find a reason why, what forced this to happen, what was the energy source or instigator or method or reason behind the motivation that allowed this to take place. But if you've gotten rid of a potential, an engineer, God, somebody just created this from whole cloth who was not part of the material world, but in fact invented it. So he put all the principles into place and then he manipulated them as he chose. And that's a great theory that completely comports to the reality as we know it. But they got rid of God. They can't exist, and they believe in a closed system, material only, which means they end up having to postulate ideas like, well, this earth and universe is perfectly designed and tuned for life. If it had been off one speck, it wouldn't have worked. Oh, well, maybe there's more than one universe. And we have string theory and multiverses, and we just happen to be this one. And we just got a continuation of more universes that are popping in and out. And of course, you can't prove that because they're in another dimension. And you still have to justify what started that process. So you still have to go back to square one, the binary, the base. But their conclusion becomes ludicrous, unprovable, impossible, string theory, multi-universes, multi-dimensions, none that they can find. It all fits in the same world that you and I believe in God, the transcendent, who's omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, but at least had a mind and a volition to decide to create things in a certain way, and it makes sense. It makes sense. Stephen Meyer, who we've had on, and I hope to have on again, has written the book, The Return of the God Hypothesis, and it just goes deeply scientifically into how God just is. There is no other explanation. And how much I have studied this, looked at this, tried to understand this, tried to make this part of my life, my comedy, my apologetics, my philosophy, my faith into the atmosphere, and never would I have suspected that all of that was connected to a man in a kangaroo outfit with a pouch filled with prepper materials. And yet, here we find ourselves once again uncovering the mystical door that can only be found in Brad Stine Has Issues with his son Wyatt at the helm.
If there's any takeaway from this week's episode, it's this. If you delve deep into that rabbit hole, you know what you'll find at the bottom? A kangaroo.
Wow. Wyatt, I have made many mistakes in my life, but one that wasn't. One of the great decisions I made was when I chose my son to be my sidekick, because you are insightful, you are wise, you're incredibly intelligent.
Don't forget profound.
You're profound, and yet you are so all over the map that nobody can catch up. Nobody can attach logic to anything you have to say. And so it keeps people guessing, and that's why they keep coming back to Brad Stine Has Issues. Nobody knows what's coming out of your mouth, most especially.
Not even I do.
You.
And that's my secret. If I don't know what I'm saying, no one can say I'm wrong.
Well, Wyatt, I wonder if you know why I decided to have this conversation with you. Today's Monday. It's our second or third time that we are going to be on Salem Live Audio Podcast Network. So you and I are now on a terrestrial, worldwide, gigantic network. We never expected that. especially with the ideas that you've postulated. Most people like you end up in quackery, and you are not given your own show on a national level, and yet you were. So that is them truly rolling the dice.
Yeah, now here's the question. Are they going to roll snake eyes, 2 double sixes, or are they going to go to the jail because they rolled 3 doubles?
Well, that is what we would call, there's a theory that would be called, what type of theory analyzes that?
Game theory?
Game theory.
Yeah, game theory.
And if you know anything about games, if you have a roommate that does nothing but plays games, one day he will end up in the floor under the toilet with his phone staring at you. And that's something nobody should have to endure. And son, that PTSD, I promise you.
It will haunt me for the rest of my life, and I'm not sure what to think about it.
Well, you know how much I appreciate Karen Boyd, Nick Kress, the Bushwhacker. You know how much I care about Danny Herring. You know how much I care about let's see, Paula Faye Marie Raucci, who we showed her photo last week because she showed up in Tampa. Benjamin Gregory, Force Bainey, Ashley Haas. Why do I know that name?
Yeah, she was the first kangaroo stuntman that I ever interviewed for my research.
That's it. And she was proficient at sewing up rips and tears in kangaroo outfits and became kind of the godmother of the kangaroo sect in patching and repairing older, antique and what do you call the old stuff, vintage kangaroo costumes that she found at the bottom of rabbit holes. So I mean, I'm grateful that she show up on this program often.
Under different pseudonyms. You know those bots we sometimes get? That's just her.
That's
Speaking
right.
in code.
Well, listen, I love all those guys, and we always say hi to them. We always know, without even looking, that Nick Kress is watching us, always frightening, always scaring. It's why we keep our pants on. We're not like your roommate that walked around nude. We just don't do that, not with Nick Kress at the helm. But you and I are grateful that we get to speak to people we never had anticipated. And are you a big basketball fan, son?
I didn't want to be a point guard, but other than that, honestly, I could never reach the net.
Well, talking to your dad, who's 5'6". So you are preaching to the choir, and this particular choir are pygmies. But I will say this. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about you. You're my son. We are in this new realm, and Brad Stine Has Issues, where hopefully it's going to grow even more, because now we have access to people who never would have stumbled upon our podcast, because Lord knows they would have watched it for a few minutes and said, I'm out. They keep talking about men in the bathroom under the toilet. But nevertheless, I thought it was a Christian podcast, but this is taking it to new levels of obscurity, which is what we're all about. Brad Stine Has Issues is all about. You don't know where to come, and when you think you do know what you're getting, the trapdoor falls out. It's like one of those Japanese game shows where they do the most impossible things to people, and all you can do is laugh because it's absurd.
Yeah, I remember those old Japanese game shows. To this day, I don't understand how they were legally able to get away with half the stuff they did.
Because there are no laws in Japan. That's what makes it such an interesting place.
Interesting's a word for it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I tell you who's interesting. When I talk about basketball, and I got to say, I followed the Lakers back in the day when I was in California, because in the 80s, because it was the Lakers and the Celtics, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. I was around during that time frame. Matter of fact, they graduated, and their big game was 79, so just a year after I graduated. So they were of my era, my age. So I got to see that whole amazing time when they rebuilt the NBA, those two guys. And, of course, Larry Bird's from Indiana. I'm from Indiana. But I followed it enough. I haven't watched it for years, but I followed it enough to at least be aware of the big names. And there's a name that doesn't get much bigger than this when it comes to, he was actually on the Dream Team, the famous Olympics Dream Team that had probably the best basketball team ever assembled in human history. And his name is John Stockton, and he was the point guard for the Utah Jazz. He played with, I think the power forward was Karl Malone, and they were a team, and they went to playoffs, and I think they even got into the finals. I don't think they ever won. But I stumbled upon him, never would have thought I would have had any connection to him whatsoever. But I was with a group of people that were communicating during the corona crisis when people that didn't want to wear masks, knew this was unconstitutional, knew this was a power grab of the World Economic Forum or something even darker and more evil, didn't want to vaccinate, didn't want to take a booster, didn't want to not go out in public, didn't want to shut down their businesses, and essentially rebelled and said, we're not going to do that. And one of the guys that was in this group of people was John Stockton. Now, this is a guy that came from Gonzaga, which is in Washington, had season tickets. Of course, he's an alumni and an NBA Hall of Famer, one of the best point guards in history, and would go to this, and they wanted him there because it made Gonzaga look good, and he wouldn't wear a mask, and they took his season tickets and kicked him out because this guy would not conform to this tyranny. And I think in the meantime, they kind of surreptitiously given it back to him, and I don't know if they ever apologized, but he was a warrior because he took his status and he said, this isn't right, and I'm not doing this, and this needs to be able to be spoken of freely in all marketplaces of where information is distributed. And so we had him on before, and we are at a place where, thank God, we're allowed to bring people back that were great guests. And now with our higher format and our larger fan base and our growing our thing, these guys are going to have be seen even more so, because I want my fans, my people, to watch along with those who are the old fans and the new people we're accumulating, and hopefully it's going to grow. If you are watching for the first time, we want you to join the Mighty 10,000. Do not join it unless you want to be a Christ follower, a disciple, and are willing to sacrifice whatever is necessary, including your life, for Christ if asked. If you are serious about that and not just using that as a term, go to bradstine.com. It'll come up as a militia of the mind. Just fill it out. It's just your email and so forth. Then we can send you newsletters, let you know what we're up to, let you know when the new podcast is coming out. You're there. It's free. It just keeps you in our database. But if you go ahead and go a little bit down and see the Mighty 10,000, it's the first 10,000 people who say, I'm a Christ follower and I'm not ashamed. It's $3 a month. It's a donation. It helps this grow. It helps us get to the places we just got to be on this national network that all you guys who are here helped us get there. We couldn't have got there without your donations and funding. But now the money that was spent to try to fix the cameras, fix the all that, you guys have no idea what we had to do to make this professional network allow us to be on, because they said, you ain't good enough. I mean, we like your content, but the audio ain't working and blah, blah, blah. And we got through that. We fixed all that. Thank God. But you got to pay for all that stuff. And so that's where we're at. You made it happen. You will get a prophet's reward. If this thing does any good, heals anybody, fixes anybody, and God uses it anywhere, those of you who participated, God said, you get a taste, because that's how it works. This is the true community, the true body of Christ at work. If you're not a Christ follower, you still can join the Mighty 10,000, but it's not going to be nearly as effective for you because you've lost a piece of your human balance, which is the spiritual realm. It's real. God is real. Jesus revealed himself as God. Nobody else has ever done it. He's written in a book. He did miraculous things. He died and came back from life. And historians who do not believe in God even do say historically they did see him and did say he came back to life. Now, they don't believe it was miraculous, but the history is settled. This guy did something impossible. You can join in. It'll give you eternal salvation. If you don't, you will go to hell. That's what happens. It is not God's punishment. It is a punishment for not walking away from sin. God has given you the way out. It's Christ. If you don't accept it, that's on you. He'll give you that privilege. But remember, you walk into hell. He doesn't throw you there. But you don't have to. Join the Mighty 10,000. Or if you want to really get in, you can join the Warriors or the Special Forces. That's where you can get a T-shirt signed with your number that I will sign your Mighty 10,000 number on the T-shirt, as well as a mug just like this, signed Mighty 10,000. And it's just some thank you for you helping us do this thing. But we're going to have more guests, better guests, amazing guests, and I hope even more growth in maybe segments, sketches, funny things. That's what we're hoping to make this segment. White and I will always banter. That's part of the fun. I hope you like us. But we also want to make this a TV show that's worth watching. And then those who listen to the audio will say, I want to know what these guys are all about. And they come over to Facebook or YouTube, jump on Stine Has Issues, and watch us do the whole episode. Because on Salem, it's basically just the guests. So, speaking of guests, this is a special guest. It is an honor, a privilege, and not everybody gets an NBA Hall of Famer on their show, but I did, so I'm going to take advantage of it, and so are you. You're going to watch a man who's very famous, a man who, as an athlete, you're going to watch somebody who's very courageous, who paid the price for standing up for liberty and freedom, and you're going to hear his story. Please call your friends if they're basketball fans. Say, come on, you got to watch this. John Stockton's on. You're going to appreciate it. But this is who we are, and we are growing by the grace of God. I need your prayers, I need your support, and let's see what God might do as we fight for the kingdom while the getting's good. So, folks, thanks for showing up, and please enjoy, as I promise you will, talk to each other while you do, this incredible interview with NBA Hall of Famer John Stockton. My privilege and my pleasure to bring you Hall of Famer and all-around good guy, John Stockton. How do you do, my friend?
I'm doing well, Brad. How are you doing?
I am doing so well. I don't know if you know this, not that you would, because you have a much more interesting life than me. But you were one of my first guests when I first started this podcast. This podcast came about accidentally. I wasn't trying to jump into the podcast world. As you know, there's millions of them out there. I felt like I'm just going to get lost in the shuffle. But as a comic, as somebody who enjoys performing, I got bored. They shut everything down for Corona. So I said, well, hey, I'll just jump on Facebook and do a Facebook Live and see if anybody's out there. Just give me something to do. And sure enough, I saw people jumping on and listening, and I couldn't believe it. And there they were. And then I just started talking about things that mattered to me. And suddenly they cared about things I had to say. It's like, I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I have an opinion and I have an intellect, a concern for freedom and for America and for the West, because my comedy always stood against destruction of the Constitution, the destruction of our ability to be free, to make our own decisions and so forth. That's what comedy can do. But in a more realistic, unfortunate existential crisis, we were finding ourselves in a position where suddenly we were being stripped of our freedoms and told not only what we had to do, but things that were counterintuitive, perhaps for a lot of us who cared about our body, our autonomy, our ability to choose our own medical decisions. Well, you were at the forefront of that. It cost you. And so we're going to talk about the aftermath here a few years down the road. I'm glad we have that original conversation, John, because it allows us to see before we got this far down the road what we were talking about and what you were concerned about that cost you, that now has been vindicated. But before we go there, because it was a few years ago, why don't we just kind of do a quick synopsis as to what kind of happened to you a couple of years ago when Corona first started being instigated, and some of the things that were expected of us and you specifically, why you kind of spoke out, and sort of how you ended up getting this sort of odd reputation, where it came from, what it's all about. Let's just kind of synopsis, and then we'll catch up to where the world has ended up here 3 years later.
Gotcha. Well, good luck with the synopsis. I mean, there's
Yeah.
like with most of us, it's a lifetime of learning and paying attention and asking questions, and it kind of leads you to a point in your life where there's, let's call it, a crisis. And for me, I had been on behalf of my own family doing my own research on vaccine, just vaccines alone, and I was comfortable with my viewpoint. I didn't need anybody else to agree with it. I knew what we wanted to do with our family, and everything's hunky-dory until COVID hits. And then you see the abuses. I mean, I'm a big bodily autonomy guy. I paid attention to my body when I was playing. It's your livelihood. It's everything. If you're not healthy, you're not available. And that's the best ability in all sports, is availability. When they started saying you need to do this, and then they said, well, okay, and they started fudging all these things. First, you need to do these shots, these poison shots that are experimental. Yeah, especially if you've done the background on vaccines in general and you understand all the mercury that's in them, the aluminum that's in them, the formaldehyde, all the product that is in these vaccines with complete protection to where if you're hurt by them, you have no recourse. So all that background comes into it and COVID hits. And so they say, okay, you need to have these shots or you can't do anything, can't go to the store, can't go to games. My school, Gonzaga University, which I'm proud to say I'm a Zag, and my family and I have enjoyed going to those games for years. And they were mandating those shots for their students. They were mandating masks to go to the games. If you were not vaccinated, you had to show a vaccine card, which again just strikes to me of watching those Nazi movies with my dad when I was a kid and saying, show me your papers. I went,
Yeah.
wait a minute, there's something wrong here. And so, but I did it, right? I did like everybody else. I said, okay, I'll get a piece of paper that says I've been tested. I'll wear the mask. And then I'm sitting across from these students who are cheering on their athletes like we are. And I know they're all being forced to vaccinate this, whatever their health is, regardless of their religious beliefs, regardless of their medical condition, regardless of their philosophical beliefs. They're being forced to take these shots to continue their college education. I said, well, there's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
And all I had to do to be on board was wear a mask. And I said, that's it. That's it. I guess I've been pushed too far. There's no way I can stand there with a mask on the other side facing these young kids and say, look, everything's okay. Just do what you're told. And it came to a head. I said, I'm not wearing it. I wasn't the only one in the stands, but probably the most visible. And I was approached by members of that athletic department, friends. These are people who are still friends. They're people that were reluctantly having this conversation with me, but saying, look, we're being told by our bosses that if you refuse to wear the mask, then you can't come to games anymore, and we're rescinding your tickets. So the line in the sand was drawn. It was an easy decision, very easy decision. And that started everything. Started articles explaining it where people were asking it, started the insult, it started the arrows being thrown, and it started really a commitment, a lifelong commitment to bodily autonomy, to medical freedom, to freedom in general, to freedom of speech, to all the things that I grew up knowing about, but never ever thought I was going to have to fight for them.
Yes, exactly. And you did. And here's the thing, it's a double-edged sword because the good news is you have weight because you are a celebrity. You're a known professional athlete. That's a pretty well-respected entity in the world, let alone your status as a Hall of Famer. And I'm guessing you don't make a big deal about that. I think anybody that's really, really, really successful at something, if they have any maturity, don't gloat about it. They're just kind of grateful. They maybe they even think, yeah, I don't know why it happened to me, but I'm glad I got to participate. It was a wonderful time in my life. It's an honor. It's a blessing, but it comes with status that you can't. I mean, you can't go places not people not know who you are, and if they love the game of basketball, you are an elite. I mean, you just are. You're one of the best that ever played a game. Now, how many people can say that? So my point is, what you do or don't do has a lot more gravitas than somebody else because it comes with authority. It comes with a sense of, well, heck, if John Stockton doesn't have to wear a dang mask, I'm not wearing a mask. And the whole point of this was we got to get people to bow the knee. You're going to do exactly what the bureaucrats tell you. You're going to put in exactly what you tell you to put in your body. You're going to wear what we tell you to do. And if not, we will shame you and even threaten your ability to be part of society. Like you said, it isn't hyperbole. That's what they did in Nazi Germany. That's what they did in places where if you didn't conform, you would be shamed, ridiculed, and that will always lead to a dehumanization, which leads to violence. If you're not a human anymore, they'll do to you whatever they choose. So, it came with a cost. So let's start with that. Let's just kind of break this down because I think it's important now that we're getting kind of beyond, we'll never get beyond, but kind of beyond the corona where we were in the middle of it, and every time we turned around, we kind of still felt like we were swimming in that polluted water. But now that we're kind of a bit beyond it until the next whatever is coming, let's not forget kind of where you landed. So how did it affect you personally and within your own reputation? And has there been any apology since then, or has there been any sort of settling down of allowing you kind of back into good graces with these people? Kind of tell me where it took you at the worst case scenario and where you are now.
Well, you mentioned status, and you're right about status, but it also comes with responsibility. If you're, again, a mature adult, you can't just say, hey, look at me, I've got status. There's a responsibility to do your homework when you speak. There's a responsibility to still be a good citizen. So I take those things fairly seriously. So getting back to where that led, I've been invited back. There are no mask mandates. However, the school maintained the requirements for the shots well past the president's, even the president's declaration that it's no longer a pandemic. In fact, there's schools within Gonzaga's conference, Santa Clara being one of them, that still demanded the vaccines through this year's for attendance. And I don't know what their status is for next year, which to me, I just can't even imagine what would cause that. Backlash is this. Definitely lost some friendships. The friendships that weren't even allowed to persist because there was no dialogue allowed. You couldn't even, you were met with the hand. That's difficult to stomach just as a human. I'm friendly. I like chatting with people. I like disagreeing. My family and I argue all the time. It's part of the fun about all kinds of things. And that one was hard to gather.
You're talking about friends that chose to distance themselves from you, that you were like shocked, like, hey man, I've known you for 30 years. What the heck? So it was that kind of a betrayal, perhaps, of friendships and what you thought was a relationship that wouldn't be tarnished by a disagreement.
Yeah, those hurt, or to hear through the grapevine that so and so said that guy's, John's lost his marbles. Okay, and these are trusted friends, and you kind of go, okay, those you would expect of a friend if they disagreed with you and the word's out and the name comes up that they would say, listen, I've known him a long time. He doesn't go by these opinions lightly. I don't agree with him, and I'm okay with that. To me, that's a better answer, whatever side you're on.
Yeah.
But I experienced some of that. But all in all, because I don't participate in any social media at all, I don't have a site or anything. I don't even know how to call them by their names. But I didn't feel the arrows as much as some people might. I know that members of my family and close friends did, because they are on those things and they see them. And that hurts because you want to protect your family, you want to protect your friends, but you can't. All in all, mostly I got people patting me on the back, whispering, hey, I'm on board, keep going. Can I do anything to help? Mostly it's been that. And it only takes a few of those to make you just feel, yeah, I need to keep doing this. And really, you don't even need that when you watch the abuses still going on today. And you watch the militarization, I guess, of the health district. And we're still getting ads in Washington State that you need to get your boosters. I mean, to me, it's for your health and for the health of your children. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it sounds to me, though, that it's clear because of what happened that they were trying to condition us to obey. They're just saying this will become so normal that if you don't just fall in line, you're going to seem like a freak, like you're an outlier, like you're just obstinate and you're harmful. And that's the way they planned it and described it. Was not that you disagreed, that you were uncaring, you weren't a good neighbor, you weren't a good citizen, you wanted to kill grandma. I mean, they used such dramatic language that you simply were just a bad human because you didn't do this thing. And, like you said, John, if you grow up, I don't know your background, we might have talked about it a little bit more last time. If you grew up with a fairly normal family that were patriotic, that believed in saluting your flag, saying Pledge of Allegiance, believe that it's the greatest nation ever, that we care about freedom and First Amendment rights and the ability to disagree agreeably if necessary, and you can be as staunchly committed to whatever you believe. That's what it means to be free. That was the DNA of America. There was a sense of what it meant to be an American. And I've even started differentiating between citizens and Americans right now, which didn't used to be the case. To be a citizen of the United States was a very incredible privilege that people would do whatever they could to get and be part of and would sacrifice for. And now I realize that a citizen gets the rights and the benefits of this great nation that somebody sacrificed for, but they don't have to love it. They don't have to care about it. They don't have to be committed to it. They don't have to try to defend it. They don't have to try to protect it. They use the rights, but they don't care if the rights get destroyed. Whereas an American would be also a benefit of these rights and privileges, but they would also believe that the country can't sustain itself if it isn't sovereign. It can control its borders so he knows who's coming in, that it allows the people to be sovereign. Yes, there will be rules, but they're based on the Constitution. And as long as that isn't breached, you kind of can do whatever you want, believe whatever you want, think whatever you want, if you're not harming others. And that there's a loyalty to what it meant to be one of us. And that was, I think, what was the most mind-boggling thing to me, was the amount of Americans that just gave away their freedoms like it didn't matter. Like there was nothing at stake here. And here's the thing, John. I guess you have a right to be a coward. I guess you have a right to give away your freedoms. The problem is you're stealing mine too, because if you're not watching my back, if we're not in solidarity, we're not going to survive. If the majority of people say we don't care about the Constitution anymore, then I guess the paper doesn't matter anymore. If they're not going to enforce those rules, there isn't any. You suffered all this sort of backlash. You suffered this attack on your character, and here you'd had years of a life lived that people could see the fruit of who you are and what you really stood for, and they should have been proud of a man who stands for integrity in his point of view. But here we come a few years later. Things have come out now from doctors, from physicians, from folks within studies worldwide about mask efficiency and how it did not work at all, and how people got myocarditis and people have died, and people have now there's coming out with the fact that there's probably a deeper cancer risk if you took this thing. I mean, it's real. People have died, not to mention they weren't allowed to take ivermectin, which actually would have cured most of these people. So we're on the other side of this. So let's start with this. Do you feel vindication? And have you had any apologies? Anybody that said, man, my bad, buddy. Why didn't I listen to you? I mean, tell me if there's been any upside this far down the road.
Not from any public forum. Certainly there have been people that have come up on the street again and said, man, you were right. You hit the nail on the head on this stuff. And that's still good to hear. But you know, the masks, the distancing, Fauci's as much as admitted this now that's all a farce. The PCR test itself, absolutely a farce. I think I've heard as high as 80% false answers on that, and they could change that on a whim just by changing the cycles, the magnifications of that. So the whole premise by which we started this, that we're protecting somebody else. I did learn something new. Here, before I go to the something new, so much of this stuff I've got lying on my computer, got in paperwork that I said, like, if I ever need to reference something, I've got this. And it's all been kind of dwarfed by the Pfizer report. The Pfizer report was 34,000 page document or something that's been gone through. They knew that it caused deaths, like 1,100 deaths in a 3-month period, 50,000 adverse events. If maybe it's 30,000, doesn't matter. 50, 30, what's the difference? Mathematically, it's a lot, but it shouldn't matter. They knew it. They knew it caused birth defects. They knew it caused problems with reproductive cycles, men and women. They knew this all before the rollout. And where is the responsibility of the people in the CDC, the FDA, all the WHO, all of these people who said the opposite? Where's the responsibility by the doctors? Each individual doctor at this point should know what that Pfizer report says. And where's their excuse when they try to say, look, those were the orders I was given? No. If you're taking care of your patients, look at the Pfizer report. What other information do you need? Do you need the stats from Ed Dowd, with the actuary tables where it's a 40% increase in all-cause mortality? Never happened before. It's 4 times anything that's ever happened before. So how much data do you need? Those kinds of things are really, they make you angry, and you wonder why people aren't stepping up. So no, I've had no apology. I've had no people changing. I mean, even these institutions should be saying, look, we're done with this. No more mandates, but they're not. The CDC, the FDA continues to approve other shots for vaccines. There's still been no tests. I learned in a podcast we did that when people test these vaccines like COVID, and they say against a placebo, that placebo is another vaccine like the pneumococcal pneumonia vaccine. And so when they test them, the test group and the actual placebo group all have this influx of toxins, the same toxins, because they're all vaccines. And there's no statistical difference between the study group and the test group. And so that's what they advertise, but they're not using salt water like they should be as the opponent, right? Should be testing a vaccine versus salt water. They don't. And I had the actual scientist that does that report on our website, our podcast, Voices for Medical Freedom, say that. So no, we're not getting outward apologies. We're getting people doubling down that are in power to insist upon our compliance.
What does that mean to you? I mean, as a citizen, just a layman, we're not doctors. It's sad that guys like us who aren't medically trained or who have in the past assumed that these people were somebody you could count on that was trying to give you real data. I mean, that's supposed to be your job as a physician, is to help us, because that was your specialty. That's what you were great at. So help me because I'm not good at that. I can make you laugh. That's what I'm good at. You could play basketball. That's what you're good at. And all those doctors and whatnot will come watch a basketball game or a comedy show to relax because that's what we give to them. But they owe us truth, especially in regards to health, because that's all you get is your life. Here we sit in this confusing world where we have access to lots of information, but now we're not even sure what we can trust. So let's start with that. You're a citizen, an American, an educated guy, but did you have any background in the medical field? I mean, is any of that part of your college or university training or experience, or was this strictly just a concerned citizen who was an athlete who understood his body and what was necessary so he could function at the highest rate? By the way, you did. You were one of the Iron Men of basketball that you played so often or rarely out on the injured list, which is rare, especially in that game. So you understood the importance of a healthy body and what that means to be instinctually aware of your body as to what it needs and what it doesn't. And in some ways, John, that's as much of an expert. Obviously, other people have different bodies than an athlete's bodies, but nevertheless, a human body pretty much functions the same. So what kind of, was this simply something that was confusing to you when you were trying to gather as much information as you could? Or did you have any kind of background in this kind of data collection and assessment that really instigated your depth of trying to figure this out, or you just felt like something was off and you wanted to get to the bottom of it?
Well, some of my youngest memories as a kid were anybody that came to our house. Back in the day when you had TV repairmen, you had things like that. They'd come and I mean, I'd be literally leaning over their shoulder, breathing all over them, watching them do their thing. And they'd say, look, you never put this big tube in when the power's on. And then I remember that. And
Mm.
so the next time he'd come and he's getting ready to put that big tube, I'd say, look, sir, you're not supposed to put that big tube on. So yep, I know I was a pain in the rear end, but they seemed to kind of enjoy a little kid hanging around, being curious and wanting to learn. So my mom was a nurse, my sister was a nurse, and I went with the Utah Jazz. We had great medical staff, and they had a chiropractor who I thought was a quack. All the guys were saying, "Look, you need to see this guy. He fixes everything." And I looked in, and I go, "I'm out." Make a long story short, I won't belabor his efforts. We've done him on our podcast as well, Craig Bueller. I won't belabor all those things, but he fixed one thing, the tendonitis that had bothered me for 2 years, fixed back pain, something I had taken a cortisone shot, but it came back, colds, flus, things within my family, personal medical stuff that he just resolved through using alternative treatments.
Mm.
I was introduced to him. I was introduced to acupuncture, naturopathy, homeopathy, and there's a place for everything. And amazing healing happens when your body is put in a position to heal rather than forced into pharmaceutical products, frankly, with their petrochemical influence, their
Yes.
petroleum products, and they all weaken your immune system. So even though we had a great medical staff and they helped me with the surgery or two, my soul went with the alternative care, and I saw the benefits of it. And we still do, my family, myself, and anybody near us. So that education took a while. And back to how do I get that and how do I know the truth? I use a mosaic. So there's data out there. Data is a big deal, but data can be cheated, just like I mentioned in the placebo tests. You can kind of fudge with data and tell it the way you want to tell it and fudge with it. But it's good to have the data. It's good to have the statistics for every basketball game. The guys who score, the guys who have assists over a long term, that can be pretty productive. So that's one part. Then there's anecdotal stuff. Hey, I heard down the street that this lady had this, that guy had that, and you start pulling those and you just remember them. And then you have personal experiences. What were my experiences with vaccines? My dad was damaged by a vaccine late in life. I had a son that was thankfully not severely damaged, but notably damaged by them. You start to see these little things and experience. And then there's contrary indicators, and you see the CDC over and over again saying the opposite of what's the truth.
Yeah.
The FDA, the opposite. Your doctor, when you go into your doctor and say, you need this, even though they're incentivized, by the way, to sell these vaccines, you need this for your health. And you go, these are contrary indicators, and they're the boy that cried wolf. I can no longer believe the words that come out of your mouth
Yeah.
because you continually lie to me. So all those things come into this matrix that I try to do to help me find the truth. And I think it's been pretty effective.
Unfortunate reality that we observe through this corona. I mean, let's face it, it had an upside. It taught us what was really happening that we weren't aware of. We trusted establishments, especially when it came to medical. We just assumed clearly you guys are trying to not let us die. Isn't your job to try to keep us healthy and alive, if for no other reason to keep a patient around for a while? I mean, once we're gone, there's no money to be made
No
off of it.
customers.
Yeah. So, I mean, you kind of need us to stick around for a while. But I think one of the data points that we saw in real time is this: if there is a group of people who are forbidden to disagree, that's probably an indicator they're right. Because it's one thing to say, I think you're a quack. But when you're saying you can't speak about this, you can't talk about election interference, or if there was a stolen election. Well, you think it's important that we have election. I mean, we are a republic and a constitutional republic, and the people need to vote. So, and it's, boy, it sure seemed like some odd things took place. No, 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 no. You can't even talk about this. Oh, then it must be true. Now, maybe it isn't. But if you're telling me I'm not even able to observe it and to ask questions and try to get to the bottom of something, and here comes this medical profession. How many of these doctors were said, you can't even talk about this stuff? So what are you talking about? I'm a doctor. I see real people under real distress. I know how to fix them because I've done 1,000 of these. That was what they said with ivermectin. This thing won the Nobel Prize, saving people through malaria and other things. That suddenly was some kind of evil horse dewormer or something or other. And these other guys were going, I've used this for years. It's a miracle. It's a great drug. And these protocols killed people, John. The protocols, the intubation, killed people. It's a crime against humanity. This is like Nuremberg trial stuff. People should go to prison or be executed for killing thousands and thousands and thousands of human beings. That's as real as it gets. So I think that was another observation anyways, going forward. People that are not even allowed to dissent must be onto something. And that doesn't mean that they're not quacks too. But, I had the same experience. I never believed in chiropractors. I don't know. I just thought it was some quack weird thing. I'd had a little bit of a tweak in my back for a while from doing squats. For a couple of years, I'd sit for a long time. It started getting achy. Friend of mine who was a bodybuilder said, "Oh, go to a chiropractor." I thought, well, I trust him. He goes to a chiropractor. I'll try it. It was a 1-day free trial thing. All right. I don't know what's going on. They put some weird electronic things on me. I felt this is witch doctor stuff. Come on. And these little stimulators, and he did a little adjustment. And so I went in as a absolute skeptic. This is absurd, crazy. You're going to crunch my stuff and crack my neck. And every time I've seen this move in TV, it's because they killed a guy so they could get into the compound. And now you're doing that to me? Dude, one day, did one little thing. I walked away. It's like, you got to be kidding me. So when you go in as a skeptic, you can't deny the facts. Something happened and it worked. So that's more of the organic medicine, the holistic method of inquiry. And it's also, I think, nods towards other types of medicine. We sometimes put away Eastern medicine. I'll say, well, there must be a reason why they've done acupuncture for thousands of years, because it fails. There must be something here, or people long ago would have said, this doesn't work. Because there are like bleedings and things that we tried over the years that we said okay, we move. But some of these techniques have maintained effectiveness for thousands of years. So there's something here. So we're taught this bias towards anything outside of the Western medicine standard. And now we've learned that it's politicized. These guys have money to be made. These guys have control they want to access. And they also this is what is so disturbing to me. Because I remember hearing of this years ago. Oh, they have a cure for cancer, but the medical profession doesn't want you to know because they wouldn't make any money. It's like, come on, that's ridiculous. I think it's true now. I think there's a lot of cures out there that are not going to be implemented because there will be a lot of money lost by not keeping me on drugs for the rest of my life. So as people watch you, me, anybody else that's trying to kind of find out and navigate the new world, try to understand what is true and what is not. They're going to do this again. I don't know what form it's going to come in, but they've already learned that they can control us and get us to give away our liberties. And that's what they ultimately want, is to have some self-appointed elite rule the world. That's really what we're at. When you got Bill Gates deciding I don't get to eat meat, it's like, what is going on? Who are you people to control the world? So have you learned some kind of, I don't know, some kind of method by which you can feel comfortable in making certain decisions moving forward? Because, like, would there be a vaccine that you would be okay with? I mean, what are the kind of guidelines you would look for now in the future for what you think might be effective and what you think is just another scam?
Well, I think medicine has largely very much earned my distrust, and hopefully everybody's distrust. It's not the first time in history. I mean, you can look back to thalidomide. I mean, when I mentioned earlier that I had a tendonitis that was fixed, that I had taken anti-inflammatories for a year and a half. Well, two of the anti-inflammatories I took have been banned because they hurt your heart. They've been banned. They're not even allowed anymore, but yet they were approved and okayed at that time, and we took them freely. They have earned our distrust.
Yes.
And here's a couple things I learned just this week. And again, I'm getting to the point now where I've done so much reading, listening, podcasts. I feel like I kind of know everything.
Yeah.
And I got it handed to me this weekend a little bit. But a gal by the name of Kelly Victory got up there and said, "Did you know that doctors have a code of ethics? And one of the codes of ethics, one of the five, I think it could be four, but one of 4 or 5 is beneficence. And beneficence insists, does not allow a doctor treating me, for example, to give me anything for your benefit. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do it for the herd. You're only allowed to treat the person in front of you for their health and well-being only." And that's a big step, because that was clearly blown out of the water with, with informed consent and everything else. And another one I learned, a different guy, I think it was Dr. Wilson, said that here's how they're incentivized as pediatricians. So, and it said it cost him a lot of money. If you're 90% of your patients are vaccinated, you get a lump sum of money just for that. Congratulations, you're part of the club. Here's a lump sum. But in addition to that, every treatment afterwards, if you take your kid in for an ear infection or for a broken leg or something, the standard fee for that might be $150 if you are part of the 90% threshold of vaccinated people in your practice. If you're at 5%, maybe you get $95 or $90. Now, I'm not a doctor. I didn't do that, but this is a qualified doctor telling me that that's how that works. And you start saying, wow, they're not making decisions about my health. There's something else in mind. To answer your question, if I'm getting to it, is this is a moving target, and I'm trying to stay learning. I'm trying to hear these other guys' viewpoints. I'm trying to understand how a doctor can, I know they have bills to pay. We all do. I'm trying to understand how they can continue on this process and not be forced to do their own research. If 1,000 doctors are saying ivermectin work, that these shots are hurting people, if your coroners are telling you that the blood clots they're finding they've never seen before 2021, if all-cause mortality is up 40%, I think a doctor should have responsibility to say, hey, wait a minute. Maybe I'm not going to suggest this anymore. I need to do some work. So I think there needs to be a change in that medical community, big time.
But what appears to be true is there seems to be nefarious forces. Again, every time I say this stuff, John, I sound like I'm in a James Bond movie or something. But yet, here's where we are. We have the World Economic Forum, some dude, of course, German. I don't know what it is with Germany. They just will not give up trying to control. What is it with these? And I'm German. So it's like, will these people quit trying to take over the world? But this Klaus Schwab and whatnot. But when they say things out of their own mouth and in their own doctrine, you will own nothing and be happy that we will dictate how far you can go, what fuel you can burn, what food you can eat. We will decide if the sun should be dimmed. This is so sci-fi dystopian. It's almost hard to not think you're in a nightmare, that you're going to wake up one day and go, this can't be happening, because it's really here. And we're going, how did this happen so fast, out of left field, blindsided us? And next thing you know, we are full blown in the middle of this toxic deep end of the pool going, how do we do this? And here's the other thing. We're just regular people. Okay. We're just regular guys. If there is a system at play, if there is a control over the FBI, the legal system, the dissemination of information, and if there literally is a group controlling those parameters, how is a regular guy going to defend himself? How can you do it? I mean, well, we got the Second Amendment, we got the militia we can do. How are you going to put a militia together? Who are you going to fight? What's the rules? Who am I fighting? The army? Are they going to come after me? They're going to call for martial law? If that's true, am I fighting my own people? Are some of the army going to turn on their commanders because they think it's unconstitutional? What is good? I mean, it's all stuff we speculated about and kind of laughed it off like, wow, we got plenty of guns, we'll be okay. But if you really had to ever do that, I don't even know how you would, because you'd need generals and people deciding who are we defending, what are we attacking, what are we trying to accomplish. Obviously, I don't want a civil war. Nobody does. But what happens when you are getting to a place where you're going to be imprisoned for disagreeing with people? When do you decide something drastic has to take place? I don't know. But we've never been here that I can think of, except for maybe the Civil War or the Revolutionary War. And so suddenly it's us. So with the people, and let's talk for a second about your podcast, because I know it was something you were just starting out when we first started meeting our group, and it was kind of a on the down low group. And then initially, because there were some folks that were trying to protect their identity because of what was happening to it. But is it a little bit more out in the open now? And then tell me a little bit about your podcast, how it came about, who's involved, and what it is you guys are trying to accomplish.
Well, the podcast is called Voices for Medical Freedom. And that's the name of our group too, Voices for Medical Freedom, and it can be seen on Rumble, I think Apple TV, and some others. I'm not very technical, as you know. So, and I actually think you were one of the guys that started us on it. I think you were kind of insistent that we used our voice. Ken Rutgers is my partner in it. He's the Hall of Fame offensive lineman for the Green Bay Packers, and just a wonderful, caring man and brilliant. He's a teacher. He's a PhD. I mean, he's special. And so we've had the most remarkable people on these shows. We're not experts. He does all the tech stuff, and he'll tell you I'm not an expert. We just get on like you and I have right now. We just start talking to people. We've met the best people, smart, tough. Some of them very sad stories. We've had injured on. We've had cardiologists, highly rated cardiologists, almost every people that have been injured a lot. React 19 that we've had, the leader of React 19. These are all so many medical people. One of our more powerful ones were three nurses that were frontline nurses that had no skin in the game. They were just treating people, and they started noticing stuff, and then how they spoke out and how they continued to try to do their job. We had Naomi Wolf on, who talked about the Pfizer report. She did the investigation. She's an expert reporter. She's an award-winning reporter, a feminist, liberal, all these labels that put you on one side or the other. And she saw through all of it and did the study on the Pfizer report. We've had people that were at January 6th wondering why they were convicted of walking through an open door with people waving them through the door. It's we try to talk about freedom a lot. It's medical freedom, certainly, because that's what brought us all to this game. But our freedom's in jeopardy. Our governor just recently tried to push through a law or pass through a law where it's okay to rat on people for misinformation. And the misinformation, again, mind you, is the very stuff that they've called misinformation about COVID. And it's all been factual, not misinformation. So whoever has control of that trigger gets to win that competition. And he's put it into law. I mean, we have a guy, somebody you mentioned it a minute ago, darkening the skies. Look out on a sunny day in Washington State. The sky is crisscrossed with these entrails from planes. That's not the normal exhaust. And it's designed to reflect sunshine, the very thing we need for life, back out into the sky. And Lord knows what's even in that product. Yeah. Who gets to do that?
Yes.
Who gets the power to use military planes, I'm assuming, and drop some sort of toxin in the air that will eventually fall to all of us for global protection? I don't get it. I don't get how you get to be at that party.
Even more important issue that I'm saying is, what can you do? Literally, I mean, like I said, man, nobody wants bloodshed. Nobody wants any of this. We just want to be free again. But you know what? Well, maybe what we've learned, John, is maybe we haven't been free for a long time.
Yeah.
And we just didn't know it. And what Corona did was expose what was up, that there were forces at play that were controlling even America that weren't American. or at least didn't have our best interests in mind, could care less about our Constitution, literally believed that they needed to reform how humans interact and who is allowed to live and die. It's demonic. I mean, I don't know if you're a spiritual guy. I'm a Christ follower. I'm a Christian, but I don't mean that in some odd exorcist way that to make it sound absurd or for people to discount what I'm saying. I'm sorry. There is forces in play that even atheists and non-believers, Jordan Petersons or Joe Rogans, are seeing it. There's something weird in the earth that we just have never seen like this before, and it just happened suddenly with such a rush, and Corona ushered it in. So when you talk to your medical folk, the doctors and so forth who are on that front line, was there anybody specific that really stood out to you and enlightened you that perhaps other people should be aware of if they're trying to gather information and inform themselves? Any particular doctors? Was it McCullough that has been so vocal and brave? One of the guys that was said, you don't get to speak. Well, then maybe I need to hear you twice as much. Maybe you had him on, but anybody in that realm that we should be aware of and follow and get behind?
I don't know anybody's doing any more work than Dr. McCullough is, but Dr. Cole, we in Washington State, we currently have a lawsuit defending guys like Dr. Cole. Dr. Eggleston's an 82-year-old retired physician who writes an editorial for the Lewiston Tribune. Again, he hasn't treated a patient in a number of years, and he right now is right there taking his license from him, and they're suing them for that. Actually, I'm involved in the lawsuit too, because I feel like I have a right to hear soapbox speech. Just like if I go to one doctor and he says, you need surgery on your neck, I want to go to the other doctor. He may not say that. You get a different opinion. That's standard protocol for medicine.
Yeah.
However, in this case, they don't want to hear that differing opinion. So he's being called to the carpet, and it's being endorsed by the Washington Medical Board, the State Attorney General Ferguson, and it's what the lawsuit's about, is that we have the right to to freedom of speech and being able to speak. So back to your question, has any doctor stood out? Yeah, literally all of them. It's been one of the greatest experiences of my life getting to talk to these guys, and specifically what comes out on that goes into the aggregate. And you think about it in a group, follow the rules. Just you mentioned earlier in the thing, just enforce the laws. Just do your job as a medical guy. It's the standard of care has gotten in the way. If it's not in their book and somebody else sitting in an office up above all of them gets to say, this is the standard of care, you have to follow it or lose your license. So you have to give these injections, even though you know they're poisonous, or you lose your license. You can't give a medical exemption, you will lose your license. You can't speak out even as a second opinion, even if you're not treating the patient, or lose your license. Similar to businesses right here in Spokane, Washington, businesses were threatened by Labor and Industries, by the fire department, by health district. We're going to shut you down if you don't comply entirely. These aren't okay. I thought at the start of this, when they closed the airports to anybody that didn't carry a vaccine passport, that was a great opportunity for all of us to lock arms, go to the airport and say, if we're not going, nobody's going.
Yeah.
And to me, that's where this has to go.
Yeah.
People have to quit saying, hey, Brad, what can we do to help you with? I said, how about lock arms?
Yeah.
And say that we aren't accepting this anymore.
Well, and it's the only shot we have. And I've said this for a while now. It's got to be a peasant's revolt. DC has abandoned us. I mean, if you think voting for Donald Trump even, and let's just pretend that they'll allow that to happen, because I don't think they will. I don't care how many votes he gets. We've already seen that can be manipulated and changed at a whim based on who's in control. But let's just pretend that he won. Somehow people voted for him. He came in. We said he's going to come in. He's going to fix everything. And he certainly has ideas and had done certain things that I certainly was grateful for his Supreme Court nominee, who have come in and made some constitutional decisions, grateful for border walls, trying to give us protection and sovereignty. But then he's the guy that ushered in the vaccine. I get it. It's an administration. He's not an expert. He relied on people that are supposed to give him good information. But I haven't seen him yet come back and say, my bad. That's been disturbing for a lot of us who are conservative and have tried to hope that he could be helpful to us in coming back in and reinstituting a constitutional government and an America First policy. One of his problems is his ego. If the dude would just say, man, I listened to this, Fauci. I was misled. Forgive me. I won't do it again. I'm not an expert in this. I was hoping they would help. I was trying to help you guys because this thing was happening. And just be that guy. Who cares? Nobody said you were an expert, but don't act like it was good. That's what I don't understand. So, like you said earlier, I don't know who to trust anymore. It's like, is everybody in on this thing? Because it's like every time you turn around, you get a new Speaker of the House that ends up completely betraying everything we thought we were getting. When I don't know what, if you believe that integrity and character matters in you, and that's how you've tried to live your life, you naively assume others do the same thing, and they don't. They're either compromised, as in they have done something by which they can be blackmailed, or they don't care. They just want power and money and authority, but they don't have integrity. Is there something in your personal life, so much as I'm curious about, is there something in your background? I don't know if it's a religious or non-religious. I don't know about that, or political, or just a philosophical or ideological standard that is your foundation for why you have chosen to be the type of person you are, or whatever. I'm just curious because I want people to see how different people, even with sometimes different backgrounds, religious or non-religious, can still find some continuity and still fight together. We're not always going to agree on everything, but Lord knows we need to be in unison, like you said. Is there anything about your sort of personal philosophy or who you are that has driven this part of your life as to why you do and stand for the things you do?
Yeah, I mean, well, when I joined the NBA, I was convinced, I was pretty sure that all the nonsense my parents had taught me wouldn't apply. They wouldn't possibly understand that world. And
World
for
of what world?
of the NBA world,
Okay.
of the glitz, of the
Oh,
bigness of that, of the money, the all of the above, just about everything that includes. And I probably went with that for a while, thinking, they just wouldn't understand, they wouldn't understand, they wouldn't understand. Then a few years go by and you start thinking maybe it took us time for having our own kids, and you start saying, wow, not only did they understand everything they said, you say please and thank you. And when you shake somebody's hand, you look them in the eye and you grip their hand and you tell the truth. And I remember dad was a stickler for just don't follow the mob. You will see how the mob will suddenly somebody will get picked on and everybody will go, yes, that person did this. And the mob attacks. It's true biblically. It's true humanity wise. So these things I just kind of said, wow. And it all hit me at once. And then you raise your own family and you go, what do I want to see as the product of this family when I'm done? Huh. Same things.
mm,
Think for yourself. Don't follow the mob. I mean, all the things that go with not following a mob. You say please and thank you. You greet people. If you've got a problem with them, this is another one. Both of my mom and dad were big on. You have a problem with them, you go right to that person and you talk. Because when you're face to face, I mean, we all do it, right? That darn Brad. Did you see what he did? And you're
yeah,
over here and you're
yeah,
free to say stuff. However,
yeah,
you and I are talking
yeah.
together. I'm going to temper that speech a little bit, and we're going to get somewhere because I think we're intelligent people that can have a conversation, even if we disagree. So, yeah, it's been a lifelong journey of trying to be a better person. I've not been perfect. Haven't been perfect medically. I haven't been perfect individually. I'd like to take back a few situations in my life where I wasn't. Think of some autograph seekers that were young kids and hit me at the wrong time, and I didn't handle it very well. So there's so many things I could do better, but that process I'm trying to resolve with my own family, and I think they'll be better people than I am.
What is it like to walk around the world as a Hall of Fame athlete? What comes with that thing? Because the truth is, John, you are an elite in that particular field. I mean, people could say, who gives a crap about sports? So it's not like sports is as important as a heart doctor, perhaps, if we would, or somebody who's feeding children. And I mean, everything has its perspective. But athletes are respected worldwide. There's a prestige, there's a money, there's a power, there's an influence that comes with that. As the fact that most of us will never have done what you have done. But can you kind of tell us what it's like to be an NBA Hall of Famer in the regular world?
Well, first, I think unlike most of the guys that have that title, I do kind of blend in. So I enjoy a little bit of an anonymity that say Michael Jordan would never would never get to enjoy. Wherever he walks, anywhere in the world, everybody knows who he is. I have to be in a certain environment
Mm.
for that attention. Okay. Having said that, my mom used to always say, everybody has their own cross to bear. And so if you're the poorest guy on the planet and you look at the richest guy on the planet, you say, boy, that guy's got to go. And he's the rich guy's got his cross to bear too. You can certainly sympathize with the poor guy, right? We all understand that. But there's a cross to bear with every position, and there's a responsibility to every position. I think people don't understand that I mow my lawn too. I go to the grocery store. You'd be surprised how many times when I was playing and more visible, and you go to the store to get Cheerios, and somebody says, "You go to the store?" Well, yeah, yeah, I go to the store.
Well, maybe they think you have a butler or something that, that
Yeah, and I'm sure some do, and I'm sure some have nannies, and I'm sure gardeners, whatever. But I think people would be surprised to see that you care about your kids and you want the best for them as well.
Mm.
You do care about others. I know, especially when I was playing and more visible, I was bashful, especially when my family's around. They understand it. They know it's part of the deal, but it's not part of the, you're not everybody's welcome into my house, in other
Mm.
words.
Mm.
And if I can just transfer that to our problems now, is I think if everybody treated it like their own household, the United States of America is your home. Not everybody's allowed into our home.
Yeah.
You're invited if you want to come in, and if you want to abide by the rules of the house, if you want to be a good member of that group, you're in.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're not.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because I have responsibility to my children. I have a responsibility to my wife to protect them and make sure their lives. And I think that's a little crossover, but all in all, I think they'd be surprised to see we're just plain humans, just like you.
Do you feel like there are expectations on you that aren't really fair? That it's like, hey, why am I expected to act in a certain way? I'm just like you. I just happen to have had a high profile job, and that is given a particular status in a culture. So thus I'm given, just like an actor, there's certain things that for whatever reason are given a higher rate of value, even though they aren't necessary. Listen, if there was never another movie made for the rest of human history, we'd live, we'd survive, we'd be fine. If basketball stopped tomorrow, people would miss it, but we'd move a couple generations from now, nobody'd care, it'd move on. So do you feel like certain people, if they are given a particular status, whether they earned it or not, or whether they asked for it or not, does that still mean, though, that you perhaps do have a particular expectation of a behavior or interaction in culture that is at a higher rate or a ranking, perhaps? Or I don't know. I don't even know if I know what I'm asking you about this, but I'm just curious if there does come a responsibility with being renowned in some field.
Definitely. There's definitely a responsibility. I think you should be willingly accepting of it. I'll give you an example. When I was about 15 or 16 years old, I went and watched Jack Nicklaus play in a exhibition. And I had the little camera that you had to wind and click or it wouldn't snap, right? And so he's walking between holes, and I'm lined up and I'm ready to take this picture, and I click, nothing. Didn't I? Oh no. So I go to wind it, and I look up after I'm done, knowing that he'd be long past, and he was standing there. He waited, gracefully smiled, and I went, even as a 15-year-old, I recognized that's special.
Mm.
Now, here I was recognizing that as a 15-year-old, and when similar opportunities for me to behave that well happened for me, I didn't behave as well. So even with that knowledge, I couldn't be Jack Nicklaus. So I think there's a wide range of how any of us will handle it. I never thought Charles Bark, I know Charles very well, and I've never seen a more generous guy with his time, with his heart, with everything. He's just a good person. He says that, but he took that responsibility seriously. And so back to my mom saying that everybody has a cross to bear. Yeah, it's not fair. It's not fair that people should have the expectation they can interrupt you anytime, anywhere, for any reason because you're famous. However, join the rest of humanity. Not everybody, at least it's a positive thing. They
Yeah.
want your company. It's not like, somebody's targeting you on the street because they think you're on the other team. So it's a good problem to have. I wouldn't trade places, and yet you're sure it isn't fair, but welcome to life.
And so what I wonder, though, is I'm just a comedian. I mean, in my little tiny subculture, conservative Christian comedy, which makes me very unique, there are a lot of people that like what I do and they follow my work and they're fans. And there are those who have met me and were kind of in awe. As the person, you're like, I'm nobody. You, so you're like, I'm not. Trust me, I'm not that big of a deal. But they think you are. And so, in my own tiny little way, having experienced what you've done on a much larger scale, but in my tiny little moments of that, where people didn't even know how to talk around you, that they just couldn't believe they were in your presence, and you feel really weird about that. It's like, dude, I'm nobody. But here's what I thought to myself: this guy, spent money to come see me. He got a babysitter. They drove a couple hours. I literally can't believe it. I'm saying, you drove hours to see. I can't, but they did, because I meant something for whatever reason. They enjoyed what I did. It meant something to them. They showed my DVDs in their family. They'd say my jokes. It was a big deal to them. So I always looked at it like I need to treat them the way they think I have given to them. In other words, if they think I'm that big of a deal, then I want to honor that. Hey, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Let me sign this. Let's get a picture. Because to them, that's what they think I am. And I feel like, my goodness, if they have done that to come see me and humbly felt that I was that much value, then I certainly owe them that much. It gets hard when they want to keep sticking around, and you kind of run out of the conversation and you don't know what else, how many more hints to say. I think we're done now, maybe. And obviously, John, you have had to experience that at much higher rate than I have, because you are much bigger fame. I would think that for those who don't understand the celebrity, that on one hand, I think you do owe them. I mean, you make the money because they pay to see you. Now, you had to have the skill, but nevertheless, if nobody came to see you, buddy, you're not making anything. It's like this Caitlin Clark just got paid whatever it is, 70 grand a year. And it's like, how dare they not make money like the NBA? NBA, nobody goes to watch an NBA because she shouldn't get paid hardly anything. Nobody watches it. Sorry, didn't say she's not good. But you put an NBA team together and a WNBA, it's not, it's watching a junior high game, and it's not the same. It doesn't generate the money. You have to earn what you bring in, just like the soccer team. So it's nothing against them. It's economics, But my point is, it's got to be difficult for an athlete, specifically, because you guys are around. I don't know about basketball as much, but like baseball, they might be around a couple hours before the game starts, signing autographs, sitting around afterwards, trying to go home, leaving the clubhouse, leaving out the back. People are sitting there, and it can be like an hour or more. And it's like, can I just go home? How do you not go? I got to get out of here, man. I mean, they don't understand. It's not being mean or being ego driven. It's like, I'm exhausted. So how do you balance that out between trying to be kind and realizing I can't do this forever? I have to go now.
Right. Well, there's a fine line between being recognizing your status in their eyes and being genuine. And I think it's sometimes a tough line to balance, because you want to sit there and just kind of big time and, yeah, gotcha. You can see it on TV and actors and stuff, and it's easier to be yourself. So that's for starters. I've been at appearances that were supposed to go for an hour and somebody didn't control the line, so I've signed for 2 hours. And then when you walk out the door, you've got 150 angry people because they just waited 2 hours to get an autograph. But again, you can't be there all day. And so you can see how, when I've done those things, like, you've got to have that line set, because otherwise you're going to have angry people, which you defeated the purpose of doing this in the first place.
Yeah.
I don't think that being famous requires you to do any of that. I don't think it requires you to sign one autograph, and I don't think it requires you to say just any more than, the president of the United States. You could say we pay his salary. They're not required to sit down and have lunch with us anytime we want. I'm not allowed to go to their table and sit down and strike up a conversation. So I don't think but I think you're required to be a good citizen. I think you're required to behave knowing that people look at you in a higher regard, with great responsibility, with great, what they call great reward comes great responsibility. I think that's a true statement. So navigating it's individual. And as I mentioned earlier on, I wish I'd done some better. Other ones I'm pretty proud of, and there's a lot of middle of the road stuff.
Well, and just the fact that you still remember, this long down the road, maybe some of the moments that you weren't at your best, and we've all been there. We're humans, we're failures, we're sinners, right? But you don't forget it because you have a good heart. It's like that somewhere there's some little kid that you were the biggest thing in his world, and that particular time you didn't do it right, and it broke his heart, and it's gonna be stuck there for the rest
Yeah.
of he'll never. Yeah, I met John Stockton once, blah blah blah, and that's why I've never taken it a lot very seriously when I'd hear people talk about meeting celebrities. He was a jerk. He didn't, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah. Did you mention the part where you just walked up to the guy in the middle of his conversation and jumped in and say, "Hey, da da da," or did you mention the fact that the guy was eating and you just pulled up I mean, did you mention what you did as though you don't have
Yeah.
any responsibility to be in having some kind of decorum and polite? Like, do they not deserve to be treated politely? Like they're not human too? They're your trophy that you get to utilize the way you want to just because you know them and you respect them. So they don't understand. That's why I was trying to ask you that question, John, was just because I don't think people who's never been in that place understand that there is another side to it that they just don't get. It's not really fair to not
Well, I
to
can clarify that too a little bit too. Is give you an example. When back in the days before players chartered, which 12 years of my career, you took the earliest flight in the morning after your game, no matter what. So whenever you flew into a town, you go to your hotel, there'd be 20 people out there with notebooks worth of cards and memorabilia for you to sign, and these people expect you to sign it.
yeah.
So you blow through these guys because it's not my job to make them money by signing their cards, et cetera, et cetera. However, there might be a little kid, and this is how they get. And there might be a little kid with a piece of paper right there. Boy, you want to stop for that little kid and sign it because he's a fan. And if you don't sign it, he still loves you. If you don't sign the autograph, guys, they're like you said, they're cussing you out as you walk through the door. That became a fine line then too, because they would hire little kids to stand there with a card or a piece of paper. You'd sign it, and they'd run around the corner and hand it to the collector who'd fit it into his notebook. And so that became hard. But one of the things I've always enjoyed is if a kid walks up and you haven't been stocked, like if you're at a restaurant and you've been there for a while, you're just getting ready to pay the bill and go home, and somebody walks in with 4 basketballs, 3 jerseys, a picture of this, and you've been stocked effectively.
Oh
Heard
yeah.
you were there. They ran to the store, they grabbed all their stuff, and they're so that puts me on edge. A little kid walking up with a piece of paper doesn't.
I didn't realize it could be that blatant. That would take some gall
Oh yeah.
for somebody to come up with like 5 basketballs and
Yeah.
jerseys. Like, what do you think you're doing? I'm not signing your, just because you did that. I'm not signing your crap, because that's just about as rude. And it must be odd. I remember hearing years ago that Picasso, he was one of the very few artists that was famous in his own lifetime. So he could go eat or something, and he would do a little sketch or sign something or other, and that was how he would pay, because it was worth like $1,000 or whatever. He took his napkin and went, did you look, a little crazy bird with eyes sticking out here? It's worth 10 grand because it was Picasso. Very few people can do that, but I guess to a certain degree, because of the what merchandise has become and that world of cards and paraphernalia, I guess when you sit there and sign your name on a ball that cost them $10, it's maybe worth $50 or $100 or $5,000. I don't know, but that's got to be weird that you just signing your name made that thing worth $1,000 or $500. I mean, does it feel kind of weird to you? Like, how does that work? Why is that worth something? Or do you just used to it, like, no, that's how the game works. I'm worth
Well,
some
that's kind
money
of how
now.
the game works. In fact, there was a time in my career where I would ask the person, "What's it for?" And you you sit there and then you talk about opening up Pandora's box. You ask what it's for, and then somebody says it's for, I don't know. I don't even want to say something on the air that would be something you would so vehemently disagree with. And
Oh,
I go, and then you go, "No, I can't sign it." That got uncomfortable. So finally, I just said, "Look, I don't want." If they would say, "Well, no, this is for children's health or whatever," look, I don't want to know. Just keep that to yourself. Here you go, and then you don't think about it again. And if they walk away with a smile and you do, then it's a pretty good exchange.
mm, appreciate your time. I don't want to overuse it, but I just love talking to people who care about this nation, care about freedom. It's so important. I just have two more things. One is this: if you were to speak to the world, and the world watches this podcast, but certainly mainly US people watch this podcast. So you are respected. People are watching right now because they've heard you were going to be my guest, and you have a certain cachet. And so the good news is that can be used for good or for evil. and you're trying to use it for good. So if you were to kind of encourage Americans or anyone who cares about freedom, liberty, bodily autonomy, medical freedom, all the things that we are now in a battle with for our lives, if you were to kind of encourage them, give them hope, give them some sense that there is maybe that we can win this, what would you tell them? What could you say to help the fire lit under people who just don't know what to do at this time?
Boy, that's a tough question.
It is, but somebody's got to answer because we're looking for some answers as to what to do now. I'm not saying you have the magic formula, but you've seen some progress. You've seen you overcome certain things because of certain things you did. So just give us some encouragement that maybe we
Right.
can actually win this thing somehow.
Well, I think we can win this thing, and I think that momentum's gaining. For me, it's look in the mirror. It's the same thing when you're playing a sport and you're going, "Wow, so and so missed 10 shots. That's why we lost." You look in the mirror, and that's the part you can control. And what's your contribution? So many people are miserable and depressed, and it's because they're just wearing it. I think if you turn that just a titch and you become proactive and say, "I'm going to stand up for my rights," and by doing so, I'm standing up for my neighbor's rights. And not standing up for their rights over yours. Just stand up for your own rights within your circle. Start speaking out and continue to try to learn so that you speak intelligently every time you open your mouth. You might be surprised that you'd be a person with status because you've done so, and depression would go away, sadness would go away, and you would feel that surge, I think, towards winning. Again, I temper the winning thing. We're like elections, we're so concerned about winning versus, I want my side to win versus what's right here.
Yeah.
And even election integrity, everybody should care about election integrity. Everybody, no matter what side you're on. I want the guy that we all choose to win, not the guy that can get manipulated so he can win, because that can't be in anybody's best interest. So back to that, I think it starts by looking in the mirror. If you can win in front of the mirror, you can win with a small group. If you can win with a small group, you can win as a whole. So that's it.
Do you think that there has to be a different strategy or a different outlook if you live in a blue state? That you have to do things a little differently because in some ways it seems like those in power over your state are fighting you as well. I mean, you're in Washington, Oregon. We know Seattle, Portland. It's been destroyed. It just has. And I happen to be in Tennessee in a red state, and I'm not trying to make it us them, but there is a difference in the government, in the way the system works, and what is expected, how you're treated if you happen to be more conservative or more patriotic in the blue. So I wasn't thinking of this, but when you were speaking that way, I thought, we kind of need to at least address the fact that, do you find it a little bit more challenging? And is there a different way you have to strategize if you're in a blue state?
Well, it's definitely more challenging. I mean, how do you fight at a local level people doing drugs in your doorway of your business in downtown, where there's prostitution on the streets, where there's garbage and litter and burning fires and tents everywhere, and there's no safe place? And you look around and you say, is this okay? You're not seeing that in the states that aren't. The things that our governor and nobody's questioning him on the way he closed businesses down and allowed the police cars to be burned in downtown Seattle, and okayed it, and how you can steal $900 in any store and that's okay. It's just okay. How can you do marijuana and heroin, meth? It's okay. It's not okay. And I think every citizen of Washington state would agree with those things aren't okay. And yet we've allowed them through our leadership to happen. And so, boy, again, I don't know how you do it. I'm not a political expert. I think all these politicians that are getting in this where the law can't be enforced and we have this prevalent in our communities, they have to go, and we have to be willing to step out and do it.
Yeah, well, it's not going to be easy.
Nope.
I'm going to do one last quick question, which is for my subscribers that are part of the mighty 10,000. These are people that are standing up for faith, for liberty, for freedom, and just want us to have some kind of sense of community so that we're not alone. So I always give them a little special little question for that only they get to watch, and I would just make it a fun one, so because it's been so hard and so dark. Though I think we've made some headway in informing people and hopefully inspiring them. So let's just do a quick basketball one. Why would I not do that? You're a NBA Hall of Famer, one of the best players in history, certainly one of the greatest point guards. That's gotta be weird. You have somebody say that about you. I can't imagine. I mean, if I was you're one of the greatest comics in history, it's like, what? It's gotta be weird, but you are. So God bless you. Good for you, brother. Who was the hardest guy? What player gave you? And I'm sure you've been asked this a million times in basketball scenarios, but this is mine podcast. That gave you the hardest time. He's the most able to guard, to play against. He could steal stuff. He made me feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Who was the guy that just ran rings around you? You couldn't figure him out. Who was the guy?
Odd, quick answers.
Hey guys, I'm interrupting my own interview. If you want the answer that you haven't heard yet, go to bradstine.com and join one of the 3 tiers. It is the militia of the mind, it is the warrior level, or it is the special forces. And then you'll get all kinds of special content and bonus answers to make you smarter than you could ever imagine. Go there now, jump on and join the mighty 10,000. You're appreciated for your skill set. You're appreciated for the entertainment that you brought us, but obviously in this particular case, appreciated for your stance, for your courage, for your being an American, for being a man of integrity, for being respectful of everybody, even those that you disagree with, but not drawing a line in the sand and saying some things are too much and we will not stand for it. And you're absolutely right. If we don't come together as a people, because we do have the numbers, if we all joined, that they can't beat. If they say you got to shut down your business, and 250,000 business owners said, no, we're not. Guess what? They stay open and we're fine. That's how it works if you are in a republic. Let's see if perhaps that's what we will learn. I guarantee you there'll be people who aren't taking the vax when they come for the next one. That I know is going to happen because there's too many people that saw too much. But unfortunately, there's still people wearing masks and there's still people looking for the next booster. So they are unfortunately going to be a challenge to overcome because they are making it more difficult for those of us who want to maintain freedom. But here we sit. So we do the best we can, folks. Be grateful that John Stockton's exists. Your podcast again, so I want people to be able to see this and subscribe to it.
It's Voices for Medical Freedom.
Voices of Medical Freedom. So go watch his podcast. I'm sure that they're archived. You can see some of these doctors we were discussing. You can see some of these people, Naomi Wolf, leftist who saw the truth and is exposed. God bless anybody that can get outside of their biases and say, I have to abandon that for the truth and for what is better and what's more important to everybody. And that's a rare commodity and so essential now in America. Remember, folks, if you're being politically incorrect and somebody says that you're being politically incorrect, always tell them, thank you for the compliment, because it means you're a free thinker. It means you actually care about freedom. And more importantly, you're courageous. Folks, we have to fight together. We have to try to defend this freedom together. And I'm so grateful for guys like John, who have a higher status, guys like me, who have kind of no status, but are in the arts and people find that interesting. But you, the regular guy, working in the factory, working at McDonald's, sweeping up the floors, or a CEO, you're the key to all of this, that we care about freedom and truth and reality more than safety and more than concern about how people are going to think about us. How about they think about you as a man of integrity and courage? What a way to go. And standing in front of God Almighty, and he says, well done. That's what you should be shooting for, folks. This is God's comic, Brad Stine. Grateful for John Stockton's and people like him. And remember, I'm just doing what I always do, putting the woke back to sleep. See you next Monday.